And we're back, baby, with another episode of making D&D player characters that end up just going into my campaign book. If you haven't seen my Making D&D PCs video, long story short, I wasn't going to be a cleric, so I made some non-cleric characters, but then I ended up being a cleric again. And now I have 3 really cool character concepts that I'm not just gonna let go to waste. Since I am conveniently also creating a campaign book for my own future D&D campaign, I'm just gonna cut and paste these characters and flesh them out in the context of my own campaign. Last week we worked on my Hobgoblin Barbarian Ezra, and this week we'll work on this Yuan-Ti Sorcerer. Now, we already sketched out the design of this character in my previous video, and you might be wondering where the snake-like features come into play. I gotta be honest, they don't really get much stronger than this, and while it looks like I'm falling into the trope of male species get to look like monsters and female species don't, in an extremely weak defense, this canon picture from 3rd edition exists. No, but seriously, I just kind of assumed that Yuan-Ti, regardless of gender, can exist in a spectrum from extremely snake-like to looking relatively human with just a few snake features, especially since most modern takes on Yuan-Ti are inspired by the picture that is featured on D&D Beyond, which, yeah, more or less, it's pretty human looking. And if I'm really wanting to walk on some thin ice, if you think that someone being conventionally attractive, feminine, or sexy automatically negates their validity as a good character without further inspection, that's a stance you might want to reconsider. That being said, I love me a good funky fresh monster beast lady. I just decided that I wanted to give this character a bit of a different flavor than the other characters that I usually play. Now that I have that elephant out of the room, let's talk about the inspiration for this character. While the whole thing of trying to create the perfect party balancing character was one uniting factor among the trio, what really was the biggest inspiration behind all the characters that I made was that I wanted them all to suit a particular voice that I just really wanted to use for a character. It's this sort of Eastern European lower voice that I have tucked away because partially because my dad is from Poland and I have a lot of relatives with a similar accent, but mostly because I spent just way too long imitating Laura Bailey's Jester Lavore voice, and now I can do this voice and transfer it into the various ranges that I can put my voice in. Okay, enough of me making a fool of myself. The problem with all of these characters having the same voice is that now all of these characters exist in the same universe, and in fact the same friend group, and will likely be featured in relatively close proximity to each other. So it would probably help my party out a lot if I managed to figure out how to give them all sort of different voices. I kind of want to keep the original voice for this Yuan-Ti character, but I'm not sold on that yet. Feel free to let me know what you think, which one the voice suits best, or if the voice doesn't suit any of them at all. I have thought about giving them all the same accent and just raising or lowering the pitch of my voice, but I feel like that would get more confusing for me. Okay, now instead of just calling our Yuan-Ti, it's time to get into some lore for her. At first, I was just randomly generating names from yeoldfantasynamegenerators.com to see if any would strike me with inspiration. Unfortunately, my brain just really wanted me to call her Rakshasa, which is a super cool name, but it didn't quite fit the vibe. I did, however, really like the concept of naming her after a D&D monster or some type of demon. I could have gone with Lilith, as I think that would have suited her, but instead, I decided to take a stroll to the monster manual and peruse the entry on demons to see if any of the names would be suitable. And that's when I came across the Marilith, a type of demon which the monster manual describes as having the lower body of a great serpent and the upper torso of a humanoid female with 6 arms. So, now that our character Marilith is sufficiently submerged in snake symbolism, let's talk about her connection to Ezra, our hobgoblin barbarian from the last video, and Ixrul, a city that runs on the principle of kill or be killed. Marilith was born to a powerful and tightly bonded family of influential mob leaders that call themselves Ouroboros. Ouroboros was one of the founding leaders of Ixrul and solidified their hold in the chaos both above and underground. Marilith was born the youngest of 4 sisters and showed an excellent aptitude in her lineage's sorcery, as well as strategy in her parents' shrewd business. Through this, she earned her inheritance as one of the captains underneath her father's watch, as well as earning the deed to the Temple of Demogorgon, a family temple used not only as worshipping grounds, but also as strict neutral territory for conducting business. Not many years into her new status, rumors of a dangerous estranged cousin resurfaced among the family members. Marilith and her two sisters, as well as a few of the assassins under them, set out to investigate the cousin and quell the events that this cousin was using in an attempt to topple Ouroboros and their power. In a form of half-righteous revenge for the heartless way that business was often conducted within the walls of Icthrul and the Ouroboros system, the cousin wanted to destroy the Pit of Vipers. However, in their search for more power, this cousin had been driven mad by garnering the attention of multiple deities and sourcing power in unstable and dangerous ways. And in a very dramatic fight that I should probably work the details out for, the cousin took their last stand, shredding their body and exchanging their soul to temporarily open a rift and release an aboleth upon the war zone and towards the city of Icthrul. In the midst of the fight with the aboleth, Marilith was psionically enslaved by the creature, and, with her already powerful state supplemented by the powers of this extraterrestrial being, she turned into a terrifying tool of destruction. Though the aboleth was defeated and Marilith eventually released from its psionic hold, many casualties had already taken place. Many lost, more injured. Among the lost, many Ouroboros family members, including one of Marilith's sisters. Marilith herself had undergone a transformation while under the control of the aboleth. Her hair began turning white, and her snake-like teeth had multiplied and forced their way out of the sides of her mouth. Not only this, but she began hearing voices from other planes, receiving visions that didn't connect with her reality, and almost constant skull-splitting migraines, which her mother had medication specifically formulated for her so that she could continue living relatively normally. Her sorcery powers also had taken a different form. The shattered splinter of the aboleth's power embedded in her gave her telepathic and psionic abilities, and Marilith would have to relearn her sorcery. After this, Marilith would recede from the front lines of Ouroboros, handing her soldiers over to the care of one of her sisters and deciding to remain only in charge of the temple and to help with the less physically taxing business affairs of her father. The Ouroboros family, as well as Marilith's immediate family, did their best to recover as well they could, allowing Marilith and her sisters to recuperate and attempting to conceal how incredibly involved the Ouroboros family had been in both the summoning and destruction of the aboleth. Marilith's father hired Ezra, a wayward hobgoblin barbarian who stumbled into town sometime after the aboleth incident, to be an impartial and loyal bodyguard for his daughter. He found Ezra to be curious, a fiercely loyal hobgoblin mercenary with a positive attitude towards change and unexpected magic. It could be the thing that allows Marilith to accept and thrive in the change in magic that had overcome her. Woof, that was a lot of backstory that I just shoved down your throats. Sorry about that. But I really like it. We have a powerful, beautiful family dynamic and an interesting key to what the governing powers of Icthrul will look like. Plus, a fun and funky fresh reason that I can introduce aberration-type monsters into the campaign. And as for the cousin and whatever they were recomposed into after having been shredded by magic use, also another very fun potential plot point. This does mean that whenever I get around to fleshing out Icthrul, I have an entire Mafia-style hierarchy of names that I need to figure out and decide who's important enough to be listed in my campaign book and where to leave wiggle room for DM discretion. And that's just one of the leading mod groups, and there has to be a couple. Also, can you tell that I have watched the John Wick series recently? All that world building out of the way, let's talk finally about the art part of things. Finding a specific reference of somebody pulling their mask away like this was kind of difficult. There are probably a lot more references out there now of people wearing masks than there were before, but I still very much was looking for a specific look. So, I had to do it and take my own references. As much as I hate taking pictures of myself, it's usually a pretty effective way to get exactly the reference I need without spending years looking for something extremely specific. For the face, I really was just looking at pictures of Mylena. Now, Mylena is portrayed with a couple of different mouth styles, but believe it or not, having lips is pretty important for talking, and I was not about to spend an entire character arc talking like I'm wearing one of those dental cheek retractors. I want to talk about what is probably my favorite design decision that I made in this drawing. It was to really lean into the chunky block shape of the marker that I was using and just fill her outfit with these sort of impressionist style strokes. There was no original plan to use the contrast of the bright pinks and teals on the dark blue at first, but I love how it looks. It makes her look sort of glittery, shimmery, kind of like scales or snakeskin, which makes a nice nod towards her Yuan-Ti heritage, despite visually being more on the humanoid side of things. It was pointed out in the comments that in the last video, I didn't complain at all about hair, and I know it's hair, but hear me out. I've just been having a good time lately. In this drawing, there were a couple of frustrating moments, but having the variation between the dark and white hair meant I wasn't just working in one color and could switch it up if I was getting too fed up. At this point, I'm doing a lot of messing around with things that don't really need to be messed with. This is because I was dreading my decision of giving her bare feet, and also being unsure of what to do with her right hand at the time. First of all, with feet, I just don't get the ick that a lot of people seem to get by looking at them. I have feet. Most people have feet. I think it's a little odd that a lot of the internet decided that the only extremes of seeing them are either ew gross or ooh hot, and like, I get it when it's a joke, but I don't really get it outside of that. But, you know, I will be honest, there's always a weird itch in the back of my head that is kind of concerned that someday I will have looked at anatomy references just a little too long, and my targeted ads and reputation will be tarnished forever, and I will never be able to come back. So instead of worrying about that, I start working on this hand, which honestly, pretty happy with how that turned out. I did have to resize it a couple of times, but I think it turned out pretty alright in the grand scheme of things if you don't think too hard about angles and foreshortening and the way the fabric is draping over her arms. Don't mind that at all. And, you know, since I'm already looking at reference, I eventually have to get in and get her feet out of the way. And, like, I have a hard enough time drawing shoes. I don't put a lot of detail in anything knees down, usually. So, it's a bit of a struggle. And I get rid of her chunky ankle jewelry, which is a shame. In hindsight, I wish I had left it. It was a really nice balance with her chunky jewelry and the shawl on top. But I was already having enough trouble in that area of the drawing, so my brain wasn't having it with the big anklets. All that being said, for not really spending a lot of time drawing feet, it could have been a lot worse. Let's talk about the actual elephant in the room. Last video, I had praised you guys for pushing us over 200 subscribers, which I said was insane and I would celebrate as soon as I could. And you all were like, 200 subscriber special? No, more like 300 subscriber special, which we just hit yesterday, which is insane. That means in like a week and a half, 100 more people more or less consciously decided that they want to watch me draw things and talk about my not yet existing D&D campaign book. So, as always, thank you so much for your insane support. It really means so much to me. I'm so excited to be sharing content with all of you, and I hope someday we can grow this channel into something bigger where I can eventually give back to you guys, and thank you for your support with something a little more tangible than my words. Of course, I don't want to say too much because it's just me counting my chickens before they hatch, but like, you know, I can't help but be a little excited. This does mean that next week I will definitely 100% be taking a break from this D&D series to get to work on a milestone drawing, to talk about future plans, past plans, and give you just a nice and formal thank you. But, you know, seriously, I am absolutely blown away, excited, honored. I can't believe that so many of you just want to be here to listen to me and my creative process and listen to me nerd out about D&D and all the random little hijinks in between. Thanks for being here. That's super awesome. In this last minute, I decided to do something that I feel like I've been neglecting lately in my drawings, and that's adding little glossy catch lights and highlights and paying a little more attention to the lighting, which I genuinely enjoy doing but often forget because usually at this point in the drawing, I'm tired and I don't really want to spend the extra time on it and I'm just pushing myself to get it done. But in this case, for some reason, I really felt like I hadn't spent enough time on the drawing. Looking back at the recording, I had a pretty standard total recording time of a little over 4 hours, and for some reason it just didn't feel like I spent that much time, which is a feels good moment, I think. probably. Anyways, so I add a few more orange rim lighting style accents, and here she is. I'm gonna be honest, besides not feeling like she really captures a very snaky energy, which is kind of the whole point of being a Yuan-Ti, I really like her, and I think I'm even more attached to her now that she has an interesting family tree and backstory. I think the colors are very beautiful and vibrant. I love the blocky brush strokes, and I'm not mad at the anatomy work, and you know I love me some good teeth on my characters. Also, I just wanted to put this out there, just in case, for other players or DMs that are watching this. I mean, the whole goal of these drawings is to eventually end up with a nice, big, beautiful, colorful book of characters and maps and stories that I want to share with you all. Just in case you're inspired by the characters that I draw and talk about on my channel, I would be very honored if you wanted to play your own versions of them. Not like I think my characters are the best or anything, but just in case, I didn't want anyone to feel like they couldn't create a similar character just because I already did or whatever. Like I said, I would be honored. And with that, I think I shall end today's video. I hope your finals have either gone well or are going well, or that you're able to take off work and spend time getting some much deserved relaxation and appreciating the people you love in the holiday season. I will see you next week with a milestone video, and I personally think it's impossible, but we'll see if I can possibly manage to express how much I truly appreciate your support. I doubt I can ever say thank you enough or comprehend how many people are supporting my work, but who knows? Not me.